So, what if humanity's greatest power isn't about breaking the laws of nature, but bending them? Today we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating and honestly mind-bending idea about this unique ability that seems to set us apart from, well, every other living thing on the planet.
Okay, check out this quote. It says man wrests the sword from nature's hand and uses it against nature. Whoa, that sounds pretty radical, right? It almost seems to be saying that we humans have some kind of power that operates completely outside the rules of the natural world. It's a really bold claim, and it immediately brings up a huge question.
I mean, can we really do that? Can a person just decide to, ignore gravity? Or violate the laws of thermodynamics? The immediate scientific answer is, of course not. You can't just wish physics away. So what's really going on here?
And that brings us to our first big idea. This power we're talking about, it's not about magic, it's not about miracles, it's actually something way more subtle and, frankly, a lot more impressive.
So you can look at this in two ways. There's the literal reading, which suggests we can perform actual miracles and just suspend physics whenever we want. But then there's a more nuanced reading, and this is where it gets interesting. It points to something called lawful redirection. The idea is that we understand natural forces so deeply that we can actually bend them to do what we want. We don't break the rules, we just use the rulebook to our own advantage.
Let's give this concept a name, lawful defiance. It's this incredible capacity to use the completely dependable, predictable laws of nature to create outcomes that nature, if left to its own devices, would never ever produce. Think of it like this. We're all playing by the exact same rules of the universe, but humanity seems to be playing a game that only we know how to play.
And a perfect example of this in action, an airplane. A plane doesn't just decide to ignore gravity. No way. It totally submits to it, but it uses other principles of physics, like lift and thrust, to overcome it. It is the perfect act of lawful defiance.
But here's where it gets really fascinating. This power to redirect laws, it isn't just for building cool machines. The same exact principle applies to our own minds, to our inner, psychological world.
Just think about this journey. You have a child who's been subjected to a lifetime of negative programming. The natural outcome, the path of least resistance, would probably be a broken adult. But we all know that's not always what happens. People can use their minds to literally stand apart from their own conditioning, reflect on it, and intentionally rewrite their own internal script to build resilience. That is an incredible act of inner lawful defiance. It's unnatural only because the output, confidence, strength, resilience, doesn't seem to match the input of all that negativity. It shows a consciousness that's powerful enough to redirect its own psychological forces. And this very same principle scales all the way up to escaping Earth itself. Sending astronauts to the moon wasn't about ignoring gravity. It was an act of profound, deeply calculated submission to its laws. Engineers used physics to turn gravity from an inescapable prison into a navigable pathway to the stars. And that leads us to a really deep paradox, which this image captures perfectly. You see this being emerging from the slow, grinding hourglass of natural selection, only to turn around and build a machine that leverages nature's laws against itself. So how can a process that's totally governed by natural law, like evolution, produce a being that can then turn around and navigate those very laws? How does the captive become the navigator?
Well, the answer seems to be tucked away inside the engine that drives all this ingenuity, the absolutely unique complexity of the human brain.
Take a look at how this breaks down. Plants can grow, animals have senses and instinct, but according to this view, both are essentially captives of their environment, reacting to it. Humans, though, we have abstract reason, and that single tool, that one capacity, allows us to shift from being captives to becoming commanders, or maybe better, redirectors of nature. And this is absolutely crucial. This isn't just a smooth progression. We're not just slightly smarter animals. This is a qualitative leap, a jump in biological complexity so huge that it fundamentally changes our entire relationship with the laws of the universe.
And you know what's wild? Modern neuroscience is starting to show us the physical basis for this leap, and it is staggering. Scientists have found over 3,000 distinct types of brain cells, and some research even suggests our neurons connect in ways that create structures in up to 11 different dimensions. We are just scratching the surface of mapping this incredible complexity.
So all of this, it all builds up to what might just be evolution's greatest puzzle. This paradox of the captive who somehow becomes the navigator.
Let's just state the puzzle as clearly as possible.
Evolution is a law-abiding process, right? It rewards immediate, local survival. So how in the world does it produce a creature that isn't just worried about finding the next meal, but is concerned with understanding universal laws and charting a course through the cosmos?
I mean, think about it from a strict survival of the fittest point of view. Natural selection rewards you for solving problems right now. Finding food, avoiding a lion. There's no immediate survival benefit to inventing calculus, or designing a system of government, or figuring out rocket science. These huge, abstract achievements seem to operate on a completely different level from the evolutionary pressures that supposedly made us.
So what if this leap in complexity actually marks an entirely new kind of threshold in the universe? A point where abstract thought, ideas, designs, concepts stops being just an echo of the physical world and becomes a real causal force that can actually go out and reshape reality itself.
And that leaves us with one last, really profound question. We have a consciousness that can lawfully bend nature to its will. The question for us is no longer if we can shape our world, but how we will choose to shape it. With a power like that, what ends will we ultimately choose?